Thunder roared like distant artillery as Jack Sullivan, a 65-year-old Vietnam veteran, stared grimly from his porch at the storm-drenched fields. Each raindrop hammered down, echoing the ticking clock of his family's land slipping away. Farming wasn't just a livelihood, it was his legacy, built by sweat, grit, and generations of stubborn pride. Now, foreclosure papers sat heavy in his pocket, more threatening than any enemy he'd faced in the jungles of Southeast Asia. Suddenly, headlights pierced the darkening evening. A luxury SUV, as out of place as a Cadillac at a rodeo, was stuck deep in mud along his washed-out dirt road. Jack cursed under his breath. City slickers never learned. Shaking his head, he climbed aboard his old John Deere tractor, battle-hardened hands gripping the wheel as he headed into the storm. Little did he know, the stranger trapped in that mud was about to hand him something far more valuable than gratitude. A lifeline, a second chance, and perhaps a shot at redemption. Samuel Sam Porter was 58 years old, widowed for nearly a decade, and nearing the end of his rope. In the small farming community of Pine Haven, Texas, his family's land had been worked for almost a century. Where others saw only cracked paint, leaning fences, and fields desperate for rain, Sam saw memories etched into every post and row, his father teaching him how to coax corn from reluctant soil, his grandfather telling stories of the first time Porter hands tilled this land, and his late wife, Anna, planting sunflowers by the porch every spring. But those recollections provided cold comfort against the bills piling higher than the haystacks in the barn. The bank had just sent its final warning 2 weeks, and if he couldn't cover the overdue mortgage payments, they would foreclose. Everyone else around Pine Haven had given in, sold to a real estate conglomerate named Mid-South Holdings. It was rumored they aimed to demolish old farms and build upscale resorts for city folks searching for weekend retreats. Even nature seemed to be conspiring against him. A fierce rainstorm had hammered the fields for 2 days straight, turning the narrow dirt roads into perilous mudslicks. Sam's battered truck had barely made it home the previous night. Now, standing at his kitchen window with coffee turned cold, he surveyed the storm's aftermath. The sky was clearing to reveal a pale sun fighting through broken clouds, but the ground remained saturated. He knew his old drainage ditch would be overflowing, yet another repair he couldn't afford. Every corner of this place was crying out for help he couldn't provide. Despite everything, Sam never ignored a problem that needed fixing. So after finishing the last bitter sip of coffee, he put on his mud-stained boots and headed out, intending to check on a levee near the southwestern edge of the property. If it gave way, the topsoil in that low patch would wash straight into the creek, taking with it any hope of replanting in spring. He trudged through thick mud, the air smelling of wet earth and rotting leaves. His mind buzzed with calculations: how many bales left in the barn, which tools needed repairs, what it might cost to hire someone for heavy machinery work money he didn't have. He had just cleared a small rise when he saw a flash of chrome in the distance. Someone's car, half buried in the mud near the county access road. A sensible local would have known better than to attempt that route after days of rain. But maybe it was a lost traveler, or some weekend explorer from the city who took a shortcut on their GPS. Sam hesitated. He had his own problems to tackle. He owed no favors to passers-by, but the thought of leaving someone stranded rubbed him the wrong way. Even if he was down on his luck, the Porters helped when they could, muttering under his breath that his conscience would be the end of him. Sam trudged back to the barn, where his ancient tractor, older than some of the retired farmers in Pine Haven, sat waiting like a faithful but weary horse. With a cough of black smoke, the engine growled to life. Maneuvering through ruts and sludge, he neared the stuck SUV. It was a sleek, gunmetal gray vehicle, definitely not from around here. Through the window, he glimpsed a woman's profile, poised but visibly frustrated. Little did Sam know, that woman and her unexpected appearance would change his life more than any storm ever could. When Sam hopped down from the tractor, thick sludge nearly swallowed his boots. Water seeped in from a seam in the sole. He approached the SUV, noting how deeply its tires had sunk. The driver's window rolled down, revealing a woman probably in her early 40s. She had a polished but understated air, a clean black jacket splattered with mud at the hem. a practical ponytail that looked ready for either a boardroom or a hike, and eyes that flashed relief when she saw Sam. "You're a lifesaver," she said, leaning out slightly. "I'm Olivia Garrett. I tried following my GPS, and I guess it decided this muddy road was fine." Her accent was pure American, but the crisp precision in her words suggested big city or corporate background, certainly not local. Sam tipped his cap. "Sam Porter," he offered. "Though I don't know about being a lifesaver, ma'am. Let's see if this old tractor can get you unstuck." They wasted no time. Sam fetched the towing chain from the back of the tractor, hooking it around the SUV's undercarriage, while Olivia held an umbrella above them, both an unnecessary courtesy he appreciated. Rain dripped from the wide brim of Sam's felt hat and onto his collar. Everything smelled like damp gravel, diesel fumes, and fresh water. Olivia's SUV gave a slight groan when Sam revved the tractor, but after a few tense moments, the vehicle lurched from the mud's grip and rolled onto more solid ground. Olivia looked genuinely grateful. Sam fully expected her to offer money. After all, that was the usual pattern for out-of-towners who got stuck. He had half a mind to refuse or request a small fee, with the bank breathing down his neck. Every dollar counted. But before she could reach into her bag, she simply pulled out a sleek business card holder, scrawled a phone number on the back of a cream-colored card, and held it out. "Thank you, Mr. Porter. If you ever want to discuss an opportunity, call me." Sam took the card, eyeing the embossed print Olivia Garrett, CEO, Garrett Agro Ventures. Underneath, a tagline read something about heritage preservation and sustainable farming. He gave a non-committal grunt. Another big city operation. He'd heard enough corporate pitches disguised as sustainability initiatives, usually culminating in low buyout offers for farmland or hollow promises that never materialized. "I'm not looking for charity," he said curtly, pocketing the card. Olivia didn't flinch. "I'm not offering charity. Actually, it's a partnership. But that's a conversation for another time. I appreciate your help." She gave a polite nod and turned back to her SUV. Sam wanted to protest that he had no interest in selling or partnering, but the words stuck in his throat. Something about her demeanor stopped him. She seemed earnest. As Olivia navigated the SUV onto a safer route and drove off, Sam felt a sense of déjà vu. Many years ago, his father had once turned away a well-dressed land speculator who'd driven onto their property with big talk and big money. But this felt different, less predatory. Shaking off the thought, he climbed onto his tractor again. He had chores waiting, a mortgage looming, and no time for daydreams about potential business deals. Perhaps it was just a fleeting encounter with yet another city slicker. Or maybe, like the distant thunder still rumbling in the sky, it signaled a far larger storm headed his way. That evening, after seeing to his chores and double-checking the levee by lantern light, Sam trudged back into the farmhouse. The house was a solid old structure, raised around the 1930s, with thick oak beams and a fireplace that warmed at every corner in winter. He set his wet boots by the door, peeled off the muddy jacket, and sighed at the pile of overdue bills on the kitchen table. Some were unopened. He already knew what they said. The final foreclosure notice from the bank lay on top like a threat. He couldn't avoid it forever. Exhausted, Sam decided to rummage through a drawer in search of a working flashlight battery. Instead, he came across something else, a small hardcover notebook with yellowed pages. It belonged to his grandfather, Henry Porter, who'd been the first in the family to keep a seed journal. Flipping through it, Sam saw meticulously drawn sketches of different corn strains, barley varieties, and even notes on companion planting with beans and squash. One entry caught his eye: traded a pair of good gloves and a promise to share future harvest for Cherokee red seed, potentially drought-resistant. Keep pure. Sam recognized the description. It was the variety they'd come to call Porter Red, a unique strain with deep red kernels that, if ground into meal, made the richest cornbread he'd ever tasted. His father had grown it sporadically but never on a commercial scale, partially because it yielded less than modern hybrids. Sam's memory flashed. Anna, his wife, had been fascinated by those kernels, often saving small jars labeled Porter Red in a pantry corner. When she passed, Sam never had the heart to plant them again. The tradition just stopped. He set the notebook aside and sank into a worn wooden chair by the kitchen table. The hush of the house reminded him of how alone he truly was. In his younger years, he'd served as a Marine in Desert Storm, then returned to Pine Haven to marry Anna and work this land with unwavering pride. But the years since her death had turned him into a solitary figure, leaning on the farm out of obligation, not passion. The notion that it might all slip away to bank foreclosure felt both horrifying and numbingly inevitable. His gaze drifted to Olivia Garrett's card, Garrett Agro Ventures. If he called, would it be just another hustle? Or might there be a genuine opportunity to salvage the farm? He doubted any corporate type would truly care about old seeds or legacy farmland. Yet, something in her eyes, the way she thanked him without condescension, lodged in his mind. Corporate sharks typically wore polished smiles that never reached their gaze. Olivia's sincerity, however, had seemed real. With a groan, Sam set the card atop the foreclosure notice. If the situation became truly dire, maybe he would consider calling. For now, the day's labor had worn him out. He dampened the lights and climbed the creaky staircase to bed. Tomorrow, he'd decide whether to keep fighting or let the bank do its worst. As he drifted to sleep, the storm eased outside, leaving a hush of dripping eaves. Somewhere in the darkness, an idea took root that perhaps the farm had one last chance at renewal if he found the right partner and the courage to try again. Over the next few days, the rainstorm gave way to a stifling, damp heat. Sam busied himself repairing fence posts along the north boundary and clearing debris near the drainage ditch. As he labored, he couldn't shake the weight on his mind. Time was ticking. Every moment, it seemed, reminded him of the bank's ultimatum. He considered calling his old friend Tom Reed, a local farmer who'd sold most of his acreage to Mid-South Holdings 2 years ago under duress. But from what Sam heard, Tom regretted that decision ever since. The big company had paved over the farmland for a golf course, leaving Tom with a sense of betrayal. One late afternoon, while Sam was weeding a patch near the barn, an old pickup rumbled into the driveway. Out stepped Tom himself, a wiry fellow in his 60s who had once played linebacker in high school. Sam straightened up and waved, wiping sweat from his brow. "Been a while, Tom." "Everything all right, couldn't be better," Tom replied in a sarcastic tone that suggested otherwise. He glanced around the yard, taking in the peeling paint on the barn, the battered tractor near the house. "Heard rumors the bank's breathing down your neck. Figured I'd stop by." Sam suppressed a grimace. He and Tom had drifted apart after Tom's land sale, mostly because Sam was too proud to admit they might share the same fate. "Yeah, it's rough, but I'll manage somehow." Tom nodded sympathetically. "I know the feeling. Wish I'd had another option before signing with Mid-South. They promised me stable retirement money, but every time I pass by the construction site, I feel like I sold my legacy for a quick buck." They ambled onto the porch, where Sam poured 2 glasses of lukewarm iced tea. The sun was dipping behind the oaks, casting long shadows across the yard. Tom cleared his throat. "Heard you pulled some fancy SUV out of the mud last week." "Belongs to a certain Ms. Olivia Garrett." Sam raised an eyebrow. "Word travels fast." "I see." Tom nodded. "Well, I know a couple of folks up near Masonville who said she approached them with some sort of farmland partnership. They turned her down, but rumor is she's legit. Something about heritage seeds, sustainable crop lines, not the usual buy your land for peanuts approach." Sam recalled the business card in his kitchen. "She gave me her card, said she had an opportunity. Can't see how she'd want anything from me. My place is barely hanging on." Tom shrugged. "Maybe she's different. A friend of mine who's big into specialty grains told me Garrett Agro Ventures has funded the revival of old wheat strains in the Midwest. Could be a chance." "Sam, better than letting the bank take everything." Hearing that, Sam felt the slightest flicker of hope, but his pride still bristled. "Partnership usually means losing control," he muttered, "or owing more than I can handle." Tom set down his glass. "I get it, Just don't do what I did, wait until it's too late. Sometimes you've got to bend a bit to keep from breaking. As they parted ways, the sun was nearly gone, leaving the porch in half shadow. Sam stayed outside for a while, considering Tom's words. This says, Garrett might be the lifeline he needed. But was he ready to tie his future and his land's legacy to a stranger's corporate vision? His father had taught him that if something seemed too good to be true, it probably was. Yet Tom's regret weighed heavily. Perhaps it was time to gamble on the slim possibility of genuine salvation, rather than await the bank's final blow. The next morning, Sam awoke early with a determination he hadn't felt in ages. He pushed aside the foreclosure notice on the table and dug out Olivia Garrett's card from beneath a few stray bills. After feeding his chickens and checking on a handful of cattle, he mustered the nerve to dial the number scribbled on the back. The phone rang twice before a crisp, familiar voice answered. Miss Garrett, this is Sam Porter, from Pine Haven. Olivia's response carried a warmth that caught him off guard. Mr. Porter, I'm glad you called. I was starting to think you'd toss my card. He hesitated, glancing at the financial papers scattered about. It was close. But, well, you mentioned a partnership. I'm in a tough spot, and I'd like to hear what you have to say, if the offer still stands. Of course it does, Olivia replied. I'm actually in the area for a few more days. Can I swing by your farm tomorrow? Buckham agreed. Though anxiety tied knots in his stomach the second he hung up, he cleaned the house as best he could, though it remained a work-worn farmhouse, more functional than presentable. He also checked the barn, ensuring the worst of the clutter was hidden away. By midday, sweat beaded on his forehead, partly from the humid air, partly from nerves. He tried to recall the last time he felt so uneasy about hosting a guest. Probably Anna's parents visiting decades ago, disapproving of their daughter living a rural life. When the following afternoon arrived, Olivia pulled up in a more practical SUV than the first time, still modern, but not as sleek. She emerged wearing jeans, boots, and a simple blouse suitable for a dusty farm. Despite the no-nonsense attire, she radiated a quiet confidence. Sam led her into the old farmhouse living room. The furniture was vintage, a few pieces that had belonged to his grandparents, yet Olivia seemed to appreciate the history. Smiling at the framed black and white photos on the mantel. Beautiful home, she commented, settling into a chair. It has character. Sam shrugged, unsure how to accept praise for a house on the verge of being taken by the bank. Been in my family for generations. Lots of memories here. Olivia offered a faint smile. That's exactly what I was hoping. Garrett Agro Ventures has a division dedicated to heritage agriculture, reviving traditional seed lines, breeding them for modern resilience, and creating farm-to-market networks that value flavor and sustainability over raw yield. She paused, studying Sam's reaction. We partner with farmers who still have access to old, nearly forgotten seed varieties. Sam was startled. Did she somehow know about his grandfather's Porter red corn? The mention of nearly forgotten seed sent a jolt of recognition through him. How did you, he began. But Olivia raised a hand gently. I do my homework before approaching any property. We track historical crop data, talk to local historians, see if certain families have been quietly preserving seeds. Your grandfather's journaling is somewhat well known in certain niche agricultural circles. Even if you aren't aware. Sam exhaled in disbelief. So she did know. I still have some seeds stored, though I haven't planted them in years. Olivia leaned forward, eyes bright with interest. Exactly, Barbara. That's what we want to invest in, providing capital to farmers who can reintroduce these heritage strains in exchange for an exclusive supply contract to premium buyers. We also help with marketing, infrastructure upgrades, and technical support. He eyed her warily. Sounds like a big operation. But what's the catch? Olivia's smile was calm. Let's discuss the details over a walk around your fields. You deserve to see how we operate, and I'd like to see your land's potential. Sam nodded, curiosity building despite his distrust. Maybe, just maybe, this was the best shot he'd get to save not only his farm, but the legacy he'd nearly let fade. They stepped outside into the glare of the afternoon sun, heading toward the worn trail that wound around Sam's main field. The land sprawled in gentle slopes, dotted with pockets of unharvested wildflowers. As they walked, Sam described each section, the west corner that used to thrive with soybeans when prices were high, the north ridge where the wind battered anything not deeply rooted, the orchard patch now half dead from neglect. He spoke with a subdued tone, partly ashamed of how far things had slipped. Olivia, however, listened intently, occasionally jotting notes on a small pad. Eventually, they reached a small, fenced-off area behind the barn, a patch Sam had once used to test various seeds. It was overgrown now. Brambles choked the raised beds, and a dilapidated scarecrow leaned at an odd angle. "My wife used to call this our secret garden," he said quietly. "We tried everything from heirloom tomatoes to old family corn. After she passed, well, I stopped caring for it." Olivia walked over to the rickety scarecrow. She gently touched a piece of faded cloth flapping from its arm. "Sorry for your loss," she offered softly, real compassion in her voice. She turned to face him. "This area might be the perfect spot to reintroduce your Porter red corn. It's secluded enough to protect from cross-pollination. From there, you could expand to a bigger field next season." Sam rubbed his temples, feeling an unexpected tug of nostalgia for the times he and Anna would tinker here, excited by each new sprout. "I'm not sure if those seeds are still viable," he murmured. "They've been in storage for years." "We can do germination tests in our lab," Olivia assured him. "If even some are viable, we'll cultivate the rest in controlled conditions and breed for resilience." She paused, scanning the neglected patch. There's something special about rediscovering an old seed's potential. It's like reconnecting with history. Her words hit Sam more deeply than he liked to admit. Reconnecting with history. Indeed. But even if it works, I can't afford to invest in new equipment or fix all the problems out here. I'm days away from losing everything. That's where Garrett Agro Ventures steps in. Olivia explained. "We provide an upfront capital infusion enough to cover your debts and necessary upgrades structured as a partnership, not a traditional loan. We negotiate an exclusive contract for the heritage corn you grow. We also help you secure certification for premium markets, ensuring the per bushel price far exceeds what conventional corn would fetch." Sam blinked. This sounded almost too good to be true. "I appreciate the pitch, but I've got to ask, why me? This old place isn't exactly prime farmland." Olivia gave him a measured glance. "Because you're one of the few who hasn't sold out to Mid-South or gone fully industrial. Your land soil is actually healthier than many modern monoculture farms, and the historical value of Porter Red is priceless in niche markets. Also, I've read notes from your grandfather. He was onto something about drought tolerance. That trait could be crucial as climates shift." They stood for a moment under the scorching sun, each weighing the significance of the other's words. Sam thought of the bank letters, of Anna's memory, of the farmland slipping through his grasp. The farm had always been a chain around his neck since her death. But now, maybe it could be a lifeline, if he was willing to risk trusting a stranger with big promises. And in that quiet stretch of land, with battered scarecrows and bramble-choked beds, the seeds of possibility were planted. They wound back toward the farmhouse, the late afternoon sky turning from bright blue to gold-tinged. Sam offered Olivia a glass of lemonade, though his supply of sugar was low enough that it tasted more tart than sweet. She didn't complain, sipping it appreciatively while standing on the porch. The boards creaked underfoot as a breeze rustled the tall grass in the yard. "So, how do these contracts usually work?" Sam asked, leaning against the porch railing. His gaze drifted to the horizon where the sun dipped behind an old oak. Olivia set her glass down on the windowsill. "We'd begin with a legal review of your outstanding debts. Garrett Agro Ventures provides immediate capital to settle them, so you're not at risk of foreclosure. In return, you dedicate a set acreage to heritage corn, likely Porter Red in your case, and we get the first rights to purchase that harvest at a premium rate. If the harvest meets our quality standards, we renew each year. If it fails, we have frameworks in place to protect both parties. We also cover infrastructure improvements like irrigation, soil testing, and maybe even a partial barn renovation for storage. Sam let out a slow breath. It's still a lot of trust on my part. Once I sign, there's no turning back. And if yields are low or the seeds fail, I'm stuck. Olivia nodded solemnly. That's why we do extensive soil and seed viability tests before finalizing anything. We won't set you up for failure. It's not in our interest. The success of this program relies on building reliable, high-quality outputs from heritage strains. She paused, studying Sam's troubled expression. I understand it's risky, but letting the bank take your farm is a bigger risk, isn't it? He knew she was right. The bank gave him mere days. This was, in truth, the only real lifeline he'd been offered. Still, doubt gnawed at him. What if Garrett Agro Ventures changes direction, decides it's not profitable enough, or merges with some bigger corporation that sees no value in a small farm? She sighed softly. I can't guarantee every future scenario, but we have a strong track record. Our contracts carry a clause giving you an option to buy back any improvements if we exit. And Sam, I'm not here just to flip farmland. My personal mission is to preserve heritage seeds and help farms become sustainable again. It's not a gimmick for me. Something in her tone, earnest, almost personal, stirred Sam's curiosity. But before he could press further, they heard the rumble of a truck engine. Glancing down the driveway, Sam recognized Tom Reed's old pickup approaching. Olivia glanced at him quizzically. He's an old friend, Sam explained, stepping off the porch as Tom parked. The wiry man hopped out, tipping his cap in greeting. His gaze flicked between Sam and Olivia. Interest piqued. Howdy. Ms. Garrett, Sam. Sam waved him over. Perfect timing. Tom, we were just discussing a partnership that might save this farm from the bank. Tom's eyes lit up. So you're that Garrett lady I've heard about. Heard you saved a few farms around Masonville by helping them pivot to heritage cereals. Good to finally meet you. He stuck out a hand, and Olivia shook it firmly. She smiled. Pleased to meet you as well. Actually, Afbashvasto, it might be good to get your perspective. I understand you sold your land a few years back. Any regrets? Tom nodded, his expression darkening slightly. Plenty of regrets, Mrs. Garrett. If I'd known a real solution like yours existed, I'd have jumped at it. Now all I got is a small house in town and a nice chunk in the bank that doesn't fill the void of losing my family's legacy. His words hung in the air, a sobering reminder of what was at stake. Sam caught Olivia's eye, both of them recognizing that this conversation was more than just business. It was about preserving something intangible: history, pride, identity, while forging a path forward. Under the fading golden light, amid dusty trucks and peeling porch paint, the ground was set for a momentous decision. That same evening, the three of them moved inside for supper, an impromptu gathering that felt oddly like a family meal. Tom had brought homemade chili, while Sam contributed cornbread and fresh tomatoes from his meager garden. Olivia, unaccustomed to small-town spontaneity, gladly accepted the invitation, claiming she hadn't tasted homemade chili in a while. They settled around the wooden dining table, which had once belonged to Sam's grandparents, making the worn varnish seem both humble and richly storied. Tom wasted no time in picking Olivia's brain about heritage farming. I heard you had a project reviving an old strain of wheat in Nebraska. That real, or just rumors? It's real, she replied, carefully ladling chili into a bowl. Sandstone red wheat, a variety that thrived in drought conditions during the 1930s Dust Bowl. Our agronomist found a family near Scottsbluff that had stored it for generations. Now it's being grown on a handful of farms, commanding premium prices with specialty bakers. Sam listened intently, occasionally breaking off pieces of cornbread. The aroma reminded him of Anna's cooking. She used to swirl honey in the batter. He felt a pang of loss, but also a flicker of hope. If people could revive an almost extinct wheat, maybe Porter red corn had a fighting chance. I still don't see how niche markets can sustain enough profit, he said skeptically. Most folks go for cheap commodity stuff. Olivia raised a brow. Yes, but the segment of consumers who value flavor, nutrition, and heritage is growing. The farm-to-table movement, artisanal foods, those trends aren't fading, especially in high-end urban markets. They'll pay a premium for genuine heritage grains, especially if they have a compelling story of local legacy. Tom chuckled darkly. That's the difference between us farmers and city slickers. We know these old strains taste better, but we rarely get paid for that difference. Now, maybe it's turning around. Conversation flowed easily, touching on everything from climate challenges to personal anecdotes. Olivia shared how she'd grown up in rural Ohio, ironically not far from farmland, but her family's business had always been more corporate. I spent summers at my grandparents' small farm, she admitted, a trace of nostalgia in her voice. They grew open-pollinated corn and had a root cellar stocked with old seeds. I guess that planted a seed in me, too. After dinner, Tom excused himself. Got an early day tomorrow. Hauling supplies. Nice meeting you, Ms. Garrett. He shook her hand, then turned to Sam with a meaningful look. Listen, buddy, I don't know your finances in detail, but this might be your last shot. Don't wait until the bank is banging on your door. Once Tom was gone, Sam collected dishes, washing them at the old porcelain sink that squeaked whenever the water ran. Olivia lingered by the countertop, arms folded lightly. I can sense your hesitation. Sam, she said softly, I respect it, but we're talking about saving something precious, your land, your heritage seeds, and maybe even your sense of purpose. I'm not trying to buy your soul. I want to invest in it. His grip tightened on a dish towel. The sincerity in her eyes caught him off guard again. For a moment, he could almost imagine Anna's voice telling him to take a chance. The day had been exhausting, both physically and emotionally. All he could manage was a weary nod. I'll sleep on it. Tomorrow, maybe we can walk the fields again. Talk about specifics. She agreed, and the house fell silent after she left, the sound of her SUV fading down the dirt road. In that quiet, Sam thought about the swirl of events. A week ago, he was resigned to losing everything. Now, a partnership dangled before him, a chance that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. The banker's deadline loomed, but so did the possibility of a fresh start. No matter what he chose, life at Porter Farm would never be the same. The following morning dawned bright, the sky a brilliant blue streaked with wisps of white cloud. Sam found himself pacing the front porch at sunrise, coffee cup in hand, mind racing faster than any tractor engine. He had half a mind to call the bank and beg for an extension, but he knew that conversation would lead nowhere. Instead, he focused on the potential arrangement with Olivia. Could he truly trust her? Did he even have a choice? Around mid-morning, Olivia arrived in a dusty pickup truck, an even simpler vehicle than the day before. Out hopped two other individuals, a woman in cargo pants carrying a soil sampler kit and a tall man balancing a drone under one arm. Sam approached, eyebrows raised. Morning, Miss Porter, Olivia greeted. I brought two of my team members. Laura is an agronomist, and Brian is a crop imaging specialist. With your permission, they'd like to do a preliminary soil and aerial survey. It'll help us figure out the best spots for planting the heritage corn. Sam studied the pair. Laura gave him a respectful nod, and Brian offered a quick wave. All smiles. This was getting real. Fast. They'd come armed with technology Sam barely understood, but he gave a reluctant shrug. All right, as long as you're not scanning for oil or gold. Olivia laughed lightly. Just healthy soil, I promise. While Laura and Brian set off to gather data, Sam guided Olivia toward the barn. Inside, dust motes danced in sunbeams, slicing through gaps in the old boards. Tools hung from nails, some rusting, some well-worn from decades of use. You see that tractor? Sam pointed at a wheeled relic in the corner. It's older than me, but still runs. Problem is, it can't handle more extensive planting or big irrigation lines. I'd budget for an upgrade, Olivia said without hesitation. At least some modern attachments. We'd handle the upfront cost, and you'd repay it through the harvest revenue over a set term. Lower interest than any bank. He ran a hand over the chip green paint of the tractor's hood. The idea of modernizing was both thrilling and unsettling. He'd grown up with the notion that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But times had changed. Let's say I agree, he ventured. How quickly can we get started? The bank's breathing down my neck. We'd do a contract review within days, Olivia replied. Once the soil tests confirm we can plant Porter Red here, we'd expedite everything, clearing your debt, beginning improvements, setting up irrigation. You'd likely be planting in the next season's cycle. The exact timeline depends on the seed's viability and the bank's willingness to transfer the lien once they're paid. Sam exhaled a breath he didn't realize he was holding. I'm not used to moving this fast. Farming teaches you patience. Olivia nodded. And business teaches me to strike while the iron's hot. Balancing those two is what we aim for. She eyed the old tractor again, as if imagining it retooled with new implements. If you see value in that, Mr. Porter, I say let's proceed. We can finalize details with your lawyer present. They heard the rumble of the drone taking off outside, no doubt capturing high-resolution images of Sam's fields. The hum of possibility filled the barn as well, swirling between them. Okay, Sam said quietly, feeling both relief and a twinge of fear. Let's do it. But I'll need a couple days for a lawyer friend of mine to read over anything. I won't sign blind. Olivia extended her hand. Fair enough. Their handshake felt like a pact sealed by the dust and the sunbeams in that ancient barn. Outside, the drone buzzed, and in the distance, Laura's laughter echoed. If Sam Porter was about to gamble his legacy on a modern corporate venture, at least it was with someone who seemed to understand that farmland was more than just an asset on a balance sheet. It was life, heritage, and history. And for the first time in years, Sam believed there might be a future for it. 2 days later, Sam found himself in the modest office of Hank Merriweather, the only lawyer in town who specialized in agricultural contracts. Hank was in his 70s, but sharper than a newly forged plow blade. He'd handled real estate and farm disputes for decades, surviving the region's many economic ups and downs. Now, behind thick-rimmed glasses, he pored over the draft agreement from Garrett Agro Ventures, occasionally mumbling to himself or jotting notes. Sam waited anxiously, tapping his foot on the worn linoleum floor. He could almost hear the ticking of a clock in the silence. Every so often, he glanced at the official bank letters peeking from his pocket, a grim reminder of time slipping away. Finally, Hank let out a long sigh and removed his glasses. It's not a bad contract. Sam, he declared, far as I can tell, you're not signing away your land. Garrett's firm pays off your mortgage, invests in upgrades, and you agree to grow that heritage corn for them under a guaranteed purchase agreement. If they default, you keep all improvements at a fraction of the one. If you default, they can claim a portion of the harvest revenues. The wording is fair, at least by corporate standards. Sam felt a wave of cautious relief. So you think I should go for it? Hank shrugged. That's not my call. But if you're asking legally, I see no hidden traps. The risk is mostly on them banking on this heritage corn succeeding. Also, Miss Garrett's put in an addendum about profit sharing if they exceed certain margins. That's unusual. In a good way, Sam swallowed. He'd half expected to find poison pills in the fine print. Instead, it looked genuinely fair. I guess the next step is to sign, he said quietly. He wondered what Anna would say. Likely something encouraging, telling him it was time to embrace new ideas. That afternoon, Sam arranged to meet Olivia at the local diner. She arrived promptly, wearing jeans and a collared shirt that looked more corporate than farm chic. They took a booth near the window, the smell of fried chicken and coffee swirling around them. This was small-town Texas at its purest, farmers at tables, old friends chatting about the weather. Olivia's presence drew a few curious stares, but she ignored them gracefully. So, she said as Sam slid the contract across the table, did Hank Merriweather bless it? He did, Sam answered, sipping black coffee. And I'm ready to sign, as long as everything's done in time to stop the foreclosure. I assume that's part of your plan? She gave a confident nod. Once we sign, we'll wire the payment to the bank within 48 hours. They'll have no grounds to foreclose. Then we move fast on the infrastructure. Our agronomists are already analyzing the soil data. Good news, it's healthier than we expected. So the field near the barn is prime for the initial Porter Red test plot. Sam hesitated a moment, pen in hand. This was it. All the years of family history, the echoes of Anna's footsteps in that old barn, hinged on trusting a corporate enterprise. But he couldn't see an alternative that kept the farm in his hands. With a resolve that steadied his trembling hand, he signed on the dotted line. Olivia signed next, a small smile curving her lips as the pen glided. "Welcome to Garrett Agro Ventures," she said, extending her hand. Sam shook it, feeling both liberated and slightly terrified. He was no longer alone in this fight, yet he was also no longer the sole master of his domain. Time would tell if he gained a savior or forged a deal with the devil. They parted ways in the diner parking lot. Sam felt like the ground had shifted beneath him, less burdensome, yet unfamiliar. As he watched Olivia drive away, he felt a tingle of cautious optimism. For the first time in a long while, hope outmatched his despair. And if that hope was a seed, perhaps it would take root as firmly as the Porter Red corn he planned to plant anew. The transformation began faster than Sam anticipated. Within 3 days, the bank received a wire that cleared his overdue mortgage, prompting an apologetic phone call from a representative who'd been hounding him for months. The foreclosure threat vanished. Next, teams from Garrett Agro Ventures arrived in a flurry of trucks, vans, and even a trailer loaded with modern farming gear. They brought irrigation specialists to examine his parched ditches, carpenters to fix the barn's roof and main doors, and a small team of agronomists who mapped out every inch of tillable ground. Sam felt overwhelmed yet amazed. One morning, he found himself watching from the porch as a line of workers replaced rusted fencing near the orchard. He couldn't recall ever seeing so many people dedicated to improving his farm. In the midst of it all, Olivia moved through each station with calm authority. She'd confer with an irrigation engineer about pivot systems, then pivot to a conversation with the carpenters on how to preserve the barn's original beams. Meanwhile, Sam hovered nearby, answering questions about well depths or local weather patterns. At noon, they broke for lunch. Rather than letting her team scatter, Olivia insisted on a communal meal. Workers pulled out coolers packed with sandwiches, fruit, and water. Sam contributed jugs of sweet tea. The air buzzed with laughter and conversation. City folk and rural folk mingling in a rare camaraderie. Sam found himself chatting with Brian, the drone specialist who also had a knack for photography. Brian showed him aerial shots of the property, pointing out how the fields formed natural shapes reminiscent of an old orchard layout. Sam recognized it from his grandfather's stories, and for the first time, he felt a swell of pride. This land still had a story worth telling. Over the next few days, Lara, the agronomist, oversaw soil preparation for the Heritage Corn test plot. She taught Sam how to do pH checks, how to track beneficial insects, and introduced him to an organic fertilization strategy that harnessed compost and crop rotation. Initially skeptical, Sam found himself intrigued by the science behind it. He realized how reliant he'd been on older methods, some good, some outdated. This new knowledge felt like bridging old wisdom and modern breakthroughs. In the evenings, the team departed, leaving Sam alone to wander the property in the twilight. Each day, the farm changed, gaining new life. Potholes were filled, fences repaired, the barn's roof no longer leaked. Even small details like motion sensor lights near the workshop made tasks easier at night. Despite the constant flurry of modernization, Sam felt the farm wasn't losing its soul. On the contrary, it felt awakened. One late afternoon, Sam spotted Olivia near the old orchard, surveying the half-dead trees. He walked over, noticing how the sinking sun highlighted the tired lines on her face. She, too, seemed worn out, but content. "These trees have potential," she said, almost to herself. "We can graft them with heirloom apple varieties. Could be a new revenue stream." Her focus, her unwavering dedication, struck Sam. He realized he didn't just owe her financially, he felt grateful on a personal level. If she hadn't driven him Driven down that muddy road, his farm would be an empty shell under bank lock. Now it teemed with possibility. Standing there in the orchard's fading light, Sam almost smiled to himself. Maybe, just maybe. This partnership was more than a business deal. It was a second chance at life for both him and the land he loved. After 2 frenetic weeks of infrastructure improvements and planning, the day finally came to plant the test patch of Porter red corn. Sam had unearthed the old seed jars from an obscure corner of his cellar, carefully transporting them to a makeshift lab table in the barn where Olivia's team ran viability tests. To their excitement, a sufficient percentage of seeds germinated. Now, with the soil tilled and amended, they were ready to go in the ground. Dawn broke with a warm glow, the kind that promised a good day's work. Sam awoke before his alarm, pulled on a sturdy pair of jeans, and headed outside. He found Olivia already there, sipping coffee near the barn. She offered a second mug, steam curling over the rim. "Ready?" she asked with a grin that betrayed her own anticipation. Sam nodded, feeling an unusual mix of nerves and excitement. Planting was an act of faith, putting seeds in the earth, trusting they'd grow. This time, it felt doubly so, since these were the same seeds his grandfather had once championed. A small group gathered to help Laura for technical oversight, Brian for documentation, plus a few local hands. Sam knew neighbors still curious about the changes taking place. The old tractor roared to life with an upgraded planter's attachment. Carefully, they loaded a portion of the Porter red seeds. Sam steered the tractor across the prepared rows, the planter depositing seeds at measured intervals. The hum of the machinery, the scent of fresh-turned soil, and the watchful eyes of those present created a solemn, almost ceremonial mood. Halfway through, Sam stopped the tractor to let it cool. He stepped down, walked to the furrowed row, and knelt. Scooping a handful of soil, he let it run through his fingers, remembering how Anna used to say, "This land is part of us as much as we are part of it." Standing behind him, Olivia placed a hand gently on his shoulder. "Your grandfather would be proud," she said softly, as if reading his thoughts. Sam exhaled, nodded. "I wish he'd seen someone take interest in his seeds beyond our family. He used to talk about how they could handle drought better than any hybrid he'd tried. Maybe now we'll find out if he was right." By midday, they finished seeding the designated acre. The sun beat down mercilessly, so they retreated to the shade of a newly built awning near the barn, sharing water and a sense of accomplishment. In the days to come, they would expand to more acreage if these seeds took well. But for now, an acre was enough a pilot project to test germination, measure yield, and gauge market interest. While the crew chatted about logistics, how soon they'd see sprouts, how often they should water, Sam caught Olivia stepping away, eyes fixed on a piece of farmland beyond the orchard. He followed her gaze. "Something on your mind?" She turned, a thoughtful expression on her face. "It's just, my grandparents' farm in Ohio had a slope like that. My grandfather would plant wildflowers there to keep the soil healthy. I was thinking, maybe we could introduce pollinator strips along that edge. Good for bees, good for the environment, and it adds biodiversity." Her earnestness once again disarmed him. This wasn't a cold businesswoman. This was someone who genuinely cared about sustainable agriculture, who remembered her grandparents fondly. Sam found himself softening further. "Sure," he said simply, surprising himself by how readily he agreed. "We'll do that." They shared a brief smile, both of them understanding they were cultivating more than just seeds in this soil. They were nurturing trust, hope, and perhaps something deeper that neither dared name yet. For Sam, the farm felt more alive than it had in decades. And as he watched Olivia walk back to the group, he allowed himself a quiet thought. Maybe it wasn't just the land being renewed, but his own heart as well. Summer settled in like a warm blanket, days growing long and hot, punctuated by thunderstorms that rolled across the plains at dusk. Gradually, little sprouts of Porter red corn pushed through the soil, their vibrancy a testament to both nature's resilience and human care. Sam found himself marveling each morning he'd walk the rows at sunrise, coffee mug in hand, to check on their progress. A sense of pride swelled in him, mingling with relief that the seeds were taking to the land. But the partnership wasn't just about planning. Olivia's team arranged for upgraded irrigation systems, hooking Sam's fields into efficient drip lines that minimize water waste. They helped set up a solar-powered pump near the creek, significantly cutting energy costs. Meanwhile, the barn renovations progressed: new roofing, reinforced walls, and a climate-controlled storage area for future grain processing. Sam was astonished at how swiftly modern technology melded with the farm's old bones. In the midst of all this, the local community took notice. Neighbors who had once viewed Sam's place as a hopeless cause started dropping by, curious about these city experts installing contraptions all over. Some came with skepticism, others with open minds. A few older farmers shot Sam remarks like, "Don't sell your soul, Porter," while younger folks seemed intrigued. Sam handled it with a mixture of awkward smiles and half-explanations. He'd never been one to talk big about his affairs. One humid evening, Sam and Olivia found themselves alone in the barn after the rest of the crew had gone home. They'd been taking inventory of which tools needed replacement and which seeds they'd test next. A heavy silence settled once they finished the checklist. The only sounds were the distant hum of cicadas and the soft flicker of an overhead light bulb. "You've been quieter lately," Olivia observed, leaning against a stack of wooden crates. "Everything okay?" Sam hesitated, searching for words. Finally, he admitted, "It's been a long time since I felt useful. After Anna passed, I just went through the motions. Now there's life here again, people working, seeds growing, ideas flowing. It scares me how much I want this to succeed." Olivia's expression softened. "You're not alone in that feeling. Garrett AgroVentures is my life's work, too. We've saved some farms, but we've also had heartbreaks, droughts that killed entire fields, business deals that fell apart. I know how high the stakes feel." He took a step closer, glancing at the newly replaced barn beams overhead. "You ever regret devoting yourself to all this? Could have done something safer, less risky." A small laugh escaped her. "Sure, I could have stayed in a comfortable corporate job in the city. But I realized that something vital was being lost, these heritage seeds, these family farms. When I was young, I watched my grandparents lose their farm because there wasn't enough support or market for their heirloom seeds. I swore I'd make a difference someday." Sam felt a twinge of empathy. Two people, each carrying the weight of personal loss, forging something new out of old traditions. A flicker of connection passed between them. He cleared his throat, pushing back the vulnerability. "Well, thanks for sharing. Glad you ended up in that muddy road near my place," he said, trying to inject a bit of humor. "Though I'm guessing your SUV suspension might disagree." She smiled, the tension lifting slightly. "The best detour I've ever taken." For a brief moment, Sam wondered if this partnership might evolve into something more personal. But before either could speak again, a clap of thunder echoed in the distance. Rain threatened. Olivia made a motion to leave, and Sam walked her out to her truck. After she drove off into the twilight, Sam lingered under the barn's new awning, raindrops beginning to drum on the roof. He felt the swirl of possibility in his chest, aware that the storms of life could bring not just destruction, but renewal if met with open hearts and open hands. By late summer, the Porter red corn stood waist-high, displaying thick green leaves and developing tassels that shimmered in the sunlight. The rest of the farm, too, was unrecognizable compared to just a couple of months earlier. New fencing secured the orchard, the barn upgrades were complete, and a small, modern greenhouse had been erected for year-round seed research. Word spread through Pine Haven that Sam Porter's once ailing property was now a pilot site for some heritage seed revolution. Local skepticism began to morph into cautious interest. Farmers who had once written Sam off as a relic started attending informal field days organized by Olivia's team, where they witnessed drip irrigation in action, observed the progress of Porter Red, and tasted early produce from test plots of heirloom squash and beans. Olivia's approach was inclusive, inviting anyone to learn about methods that combined old seed lines with new ecological practices. During one of these field demonstrations, Sam spotted Tom Reed among the onlookers. After the crowd dispersed, he caught up with Tom near the greenhouse. "Didn't think you'd come," Sam said, wiping sweat from his brow. Tom shrugged, eyes on the rows of vibrant corn. "Had to see it for myself." "That's something." "Sam, never thought I'd see your place turn into a showcase." Sam chuckled. "Me neither, but I can't take all the credit. This is Garrett's investment and a whole team's work." Tom pursed his lips thoughtfully. "And you're the one who didn't give up." He gestured toward a sign near the greenhouse entrance that read, "Preserving yesterday, growing tomorrow." "That your motto now," Sam laughed. "It's Olivia's motto, but it fits, doesn't it?" Tom gazed at the sign, then nodded. "Yeah, it does. Listen, I'm sorry I didn't stand by you when things got bad. Selling my land was a mistake. Seeing what you're doing here makes me realize some fights are worth having." The two men shared a moment of understanding, an unspoken apology, and acceptance. Then Tom patted Sam on the shoulder and headed home, leaving Sam with a bittersweet sense of what might have been had Tom not sold his place. But regrets aside, Sam felt grateful for a second chance at his own legacy. Meanwhile, Olivia arranged a meeting with high-end restaurant buyers from Austin and Dallas. She wanted them to sample the unique flavor profile of Porter Red as soon as it was harvest ready. With each planning call, Sam's sense of amazement grew. Chefs paying top dollar for a variety of corn that, just months ago, he considered worthless in the modern market. In the quieter moments, Sam wrestled with new emotions. His collaboration with Olivia was going smoothly, maybe too smoothly. They'd struck up a genuine friendship, sharing meals and stories of their families, sometimes working side by side well into the night. He found himself looking forward to her visits more than was strictly business-related. Yet he feared complicating the partnership with personal feelings. The farm had always been his sole focus since Anna's passing. Could he open his heart to someone new one evening, after the last visitor left a field tour? Sam and Olivia lingered by the orchard. Fireflies sparkled against the deepening dusk. Olivia, noticing Sam's hesitation, gently asked if everything was okay. He mustered a faint smile, thinking how it felt both exhilarating and terrifying to stand on the brink of something wonderful both for the land and for them. All he could say was, "I'm just grateful." She nodded in understanding, and they walked back to the farmhouse in companionable silence. Sometimes words weren't needed to sense the seeds of change taking root between them. Harvest season arrived with a triumphant flourish. Sturdy stalks of Porter Red corn reached full maturity, their deep-hued kernels gleaming like rubies and garnets under the Texas sun. Sam couldn't contain his pride when the agronomists measured the yield and found it more bountiful than any of them had dared hope. Olivia's team documented every step, capturing photos, soil data, flavor profiles from test grinds. The initial reports promised strong market interest, particularly among chefs who prized unique heritage grains. A celebration was inevitable both to showcase the success of the pilot program and to honor the culmination of months of hard work. On a sunny Saturday, they organized a harvest gathering on the farm, inviting local neighbors, other farmers, prospective buyers, and a few curious journalists who had caught wind of this improbable revival story. Tables were set up under strings of lights, laden with dishes prepared from heirloom vegetables, cornbread made from freshly milled Porter Red, and homemade pies from orchard apples. Sam was overwhelmed by the turnout. People roamed the fields, exclaiming over the vibrant corn rows, the modern greenhouse, and the orchard's hopeful graftings. Folks who had once pitied him or doubted his choices were now congratulating him, asking how they could get involved, or if Garrett AgroVentures might expand to help them. Too. At the center of it all was Olivia, moving through the crowd with a welcoming smile, bridging the gap between corporate slickness and rural authenticity as though she'd been born to do it. Late in the afternoon, while sampling a slice of cornbread at one of the tables, Sam noticed Olivia quietly slip away from the throng. Concerned, he followed her around the barn to where the orchard began. He found her gazing at the orchard's perimeter, where new young shoots indicated the grafts had taken hold. A gentle breeze rippled her hair in the golden light. "Everything all right?" he asked softly, stepping up beside her. She let out a contented sigh. "More than all right." "Sam, today's a dream come true. Seeing a heritage strain saved from obscurity and a farm rescued from the brink. It's what I've always wanted for Garrett AgroVentures." But now her voice trailed off, and she turned to face him. In her eyes, he saw a blend of resolve and vulnerability. "I realize it's become more personal than I expected. This farm, these people, and you, it means more to me than just a project." His heart thumped. The unspoken truth hung between them. They had forged a bond through the sweat of reviving the land, through shared losses and common dreams. Slowly, he reached for her hand. "I never thought I'd feel this way again after Anna passed." He admitted, "The farm and I, we've both been stuck in survival mode. You brought us back to life." She squeezed his hand gently, words no longer necessary. In the background, laughter and music from the harvest celebration floated on the air. They stood there, framed by the orchard's new shoot symbols of rebirth and hope, much like the seeds they had sown together. For a moment, the magnitude of what they had accomplished shimmered between them, bigger than any single harvest, any single business deal. Finally, Olivia broke the silence. "We're at a crossroads. You and I, the program will expand beyond Pine Haven, but I don't want to leave this place behind. Not if it means leaving you." Sam swallowed the lump in his throat. "Stay," he whispered. "We'll figure out the rest." It wasn't a grand speech, but it carried all the sincerity he could muster. She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. In that quiet corner of the orchard, they sealed more than a successful harvest. They sealed a future intertwined farmer and entrepreneur, tradition and innovation, heartbreak and new love. As dusk draped the fields in soft shadows, they walked hand in hand back toward the gathering lights, the orchard behind them whispering promises of seasons yet to come. Indeed, both the land and their lives were reborn, a testament that, sometimes, from even the most desperate struggles, the rarest and most precious seeds of hope can flourish. Sunset cast amber and crimson shadows over Sullivan Farm, fields flourishing under skies as vast as freedom itself. Jack stood proudly, calloused hands resting on the tractor wheel, the smell of freshly harvested heritage corn rich and comforting. Beside him, Elizabeth, once the mysterious stranger from that stormy night, now his closest ally, smiled quietly, the engagement ring gleaming softly on her finger. Together, they'd face down corporate greed, debt collectors, and self-doubt, transforming struggle into triumph, preserving a legacy that honored past generations. Neighbors, old vets, and lifelong friends gathered at tables laden with food fresh from the land, real American bounty. Like Thanksgiving come early. Jack raised his glass, voice steady and proud, to resilience, to heritage, and to second chances earned the hard way. Applause erupted, laughter mingling with the distant cry of hawks overhead. In that moment, Jack knew he'd saved more than his farm. He'd reclaimed his purpose. Life, land, and love under the wide-open American sky. Everything had finally come full circle, richer and stronger than ever before.